hopefully you've kind of just finished your taxes or are working on them a little bit. So what I hope is that some of this information, you can now take what you've gathered from your taxes and figured out how to place them in these buckets that we're going to talk about today, okay? And how to audit your business, kind of where you're at currently, where you want it to be, that kind of thing, okay? So we'll let a couple more people come in. I'm going to open the chat box here, and here's where I want to start with just talking for a second. When I say profit, right, we're here today to talk about profit first and how we get profit first. When I say that word, what goes through your head? What's profit look like to you? Because this is important.
Extra money.
Extra money. Okay, that's a good one. What else? Profit. What's profit look like? Okay, that's good. Money after expenses. Okay, Kelly. Vacations, Anna. All right, good. Here's how I want you to think about it. A lot of those things that you're mentioning, right? Your expenses, your vacations, your things like that, that would we agree is what you get paid for doing the job, for being the employee of the business, right? That's what you get paid for being the employee of the business. The profit is the ownership interest. Okay, so when you are also the owner of this company, you should not only be getting paid to do the daily work, you also should be getting paid ownership interest as well. Okay, so I want you to keep remembering that. These profits, yep, are what is left, right? How you build wealth. Okay, if you don't have anything to show after a year in the bank or to build wealth with, you do not have profit for your business. You might have income. You might have lots of income. Oh, okay. But you do not have profit. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's start with this. How many of you have had a really, really good closing month and still felt a little uneasy about where money is at the end of that? I know I have plenty. Yeah. Commission is weird. Real estate is weird because we get paid by commissions, right? So it's not steady. It's very emotional. How many of our closings are very emotionally tied, right? And we tend to live in this feast or famine mode, right? It's like it all comes at once, and then we have this big deficit of things we owe. We get these closings, and then now we got to pay all that back and get all caught up. And it's like closings become a restart for us, right? They just get us back to zero. What I want to do today is get you out of that mindset, okay? Closing shouldn't be your restart. We have got to figure out how to plan for every penny that's coming out and get ahead of this money and not be behind it, okay? So, am I sharing my screen yet? Let me get this up here. Today, we're going to be talking about two books, okay? It's one book that then they took and broke it up.
Julie, you muted yourself.
Thanks. Okay, can you hear me now? I got a note that the host wanted me to unmute. I'm so afraid to hit any button now that isn't a normal button. I'm like, who's it going to let in? Okay, so these are the books we're talking about today. Okay, is Profit First by Mike Michalowicz, and then Profit First for Real Estate Agents. Okay, so if you haven't read either, just go straight to this one. Go grab it. Today, we're going to do the very basic mindset of Profit First, the mindset and the layout, okay? The work you're going to have to do afterwards is go get the book and dig in more specifically on you, your psychology with money, your relationship with money, where your current expenses stand now, how can you build them to get you where you want to go, Okay, so this is the intro to it. And then if enough of you are interested, we can absolutely do a second step one where we dig more into all of that. Okay, but today, what we want to do is I'm going to lay out a system that is going to do a few things. Number one, you're going to pay yourselves first. Okay, you're going to pay yourself first. Number two, you're going to set aside money without even thinking about it. And you're going to start building profit today. On your next commission check, you're going to start building profit. Okay? All right. So today, we are going to dig into why you feel like where the money went. Okay? How many times do you have a commission and it goes to bills, it goes to marketing, it goes to living expenses, it goes everywhere, right? And by the end of that, you have nothing to show for it. You're like, okay, all that did was get me back to square one again, right? We have to start finding out where did that money go. And here's what's going to happen. If you don't have a plan for that money, you don't have any control of where it goes. Okay, so instead of questioning where your money went, I want you to create the plan today to tell it where you want it to go and what you want it to do. Okay, so with a system, all right, it's going to help you deal with this emotional spending. How many of us tend to potentially spend money when we get a closing on things that we may not need? Right? Maybe we spend more marketing when we have a good influx of closings and income instead of really allocating it well. So today we want to get out of that. We're going to figure out how to make your income feel more consistent, okay, and get you out of this emotional spending. So what I have found, and I believe this is probably true for every one of you on the screen, you do not have an income issue. Okay, you're here because you're making money, most likely, right? We talk a lot in all of our other webinars on how we're going to make the money. Right? Today, we're talking about how we're going to keep the money. It is likely not that you have an income problem. It is likely that you don't have a structure around your income when it starts coming in, which creates this continual cycle of feast and famine. Okay? All right. Here's the most simple, basic way to lay this out for you. The way we think of profit is how you guys kind of just described it in the beginning, right? We have our sales, we have our expenses, and whatever's left over is the profit, right? The mindset shift that Profit First teaches you is to put that on its head. Who always gets paid first in the transactions? Your referral fees, your brokers, right? The most important people are always getting paid off the top, but you're not paying yourself any profits off the top. So what I want you to change your mindset of is that it should be like this. Your sales minus the profit equals the expenses you have to spend for the business. Okay? Does that make sense? So you have to allocate. You have to make the profit as important as all of those other people that are taking their fair share first, right? And give yourself your profit off the top. Then figure out how much you have for the rest of the expenses, which we're going to dig into here in a minute. Okay? Any questions so far? Okay. So let's dig in. It's planned first. Okay. We're going to talk today about two key financial books that I use when it comes to managing your money in real estate. The first is The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. That is a great book. It gives you the entire model of exactly where your expenses should go. Okay, so when we talk about this big pool of expenses, how much of your expenses should go to lead generation? How much of it should go to mail marketing? How much of it should go to coaching and education, right? That is what's going to be in the MREA book. Okay, so if you do not know those, go there. Okay, that's going to tell you where your money should go. All right. Profit First is going to show you how we actually go through the process of getting the profit off the top. Okay, so all you're going to see in Profit First is a bucket called expenses. To truly know your numbers, you need to understand where those expenses are going, what returns they're getting, right? There's a lot of work you have to do in the expenses bucket. That is what MREA is for. Okay? So just to be clear, you're going to need both of these tools really to get your system down and well run. Okay. This is the most important piece. We have 5 buckets that your money should go into. And we're going to spend some time on each of these 5 buckets talking about what they are, what goes in them, okay, and why they're important. So first, your profit. We've talked about that. Profit is your ownership interest in this business. If you truly aren't getting ownership interest, that is when you should probably take a step back and say, do I need to go do something else? Is it worth having a business that I'm not getting any ownership from? It may be. It may be great to have a business that at least pays you what you need to make, right? However, I want you to really think about it. If you're a CEO running a business, are you profiting off this business? Okay. Costs of sales. This is a term that the easiest way to remember it is there's no cost if there's no sale. Okay, so what's that mean? If you do not have a sale, if you do not have a closing, this expense would not exist. Okay, so I'm going to open up the chat box. Tell me some of the things you think might fall under a cost of sale expense. Cost of sale expense. Photos, yep. For your listings, that's absolutely right. Client gifts for closings, yes. Signs, yep. Staging, yep. What about your transaction manager if you pay per closing? That's oftentimes a cost of sale. You only pay it if you close. Referral fees, another cost. You don't have a sale, you don't have a cost, right? Referral fees, okay? So those are your costs of sales. I want you to remember that because every referral fee, every pay for lead, all that kind of stuff comes out only if you have closings. Your brokerage fees, right? They come out only if you have a closing. Now there is typically an amount that you don't go over, right? But those are all costs of sales. Okay, if you have any questions about that, let me know. They're not fixed expenses. Red is your fixed expenses. Okay, so the fixed expenses is what we really want to be budgeting every year. We really want to know where those expenses are all the time, what return we're getting on them, and where those stand. Okay, your owner pay. Okay, this is your payroll. Okay, this is what you live off of. This is what you make your car payment with. This is what you pay your mortgage with. Okay, this is like if you went out and had any job that you had a salary for and they paid you every 2 weeks, that is what this money is for. Okay, this is your money for doing the job. The owner pay. And then of course, taxes. And that is so important. Okay, so having an account for your taxes. All right, if you have any questions about those 5 buckets, let me know. Okay, but here's how I want you to be thinking of your commission breakdown every time of them going into one of these 5 buckets, every penny of your commission. Okay, so first let's look at this. In the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, what they said was in an annual year's business, it's the 30-40-30 rule. Okay, you should have about 40% cost of sales, right? 40% referral fees, commissions you pay out if you've got buyer's agents, transaction manager fees, that kind of stuff. 30% expenses and 30% profit, which is wonderful and exactly what the profit first model is saying, except the key differentiators here are this. When owner pay, right, is considered separately, that's what you're using cost of sales for right now. Okay, so we got to make sure those are separated out. Same with the expenses. When you look at a 30% expense, you have to pay attention to 20% of that as taxes. So really you only have 10% of every commission check that goes to running the expenses of the business. Okay, so this is what we're reaching for. This is the ideal profit first breakdown from every closing that you have. Okay. Now we can't all start here. Okay. So now I'm going to kind of walk you through how you grow into this. And at each stage of your real estate business, what you should be focused on insofar as how you hit these percentages. Okay. Well, hold on. I want to stay here for just another minute. Okay. So the other key part of these 5 buckets in the profit first model is you have 5 separate bank accounts. 5 separate bank accounts. In the book, he goes into all the key things you can do, say, for your bank to get fees waived and all that kind of stuff, right? In order to set up these 5 bank accounts. And it's important because profit should be in a savings account. Taxes should be in a separate savings account. It is important that both your profit and your taxes are out of sight, out of mind. Right off the top. Here is a tip that I learned from a coach early in my, well, not early in my business, not as early enough as I wish. However, this is a great one to get you starting to go to profit. If you're at a company where you pay a split until a certain point and then you get 100%, don't ever pay yourself 100%. So when you stop paying it to your company, pay it to your profit. Okay, that's the best step you can make now in your business to start building up this profit for yourself. Okay, did that make sense? So pay your split to your broker as you always would. Once you hit that max and you're getting 100%, I want 20% to come off the top that you still never, ever, ever see. And it now goes to your profit account. Okay, your next 100% check, you should at least be able to do that and start your profit account. Okay. So then the other 3 are separate checking accounts. Separate checking accounts. Okay. And then the process is twice a month, everything gets dropped into the income account. Okay, which is one place that's wherever you send it, right? The capture account. And then it's going to automatically feed out into these other accounts. Okay, and twice a month, you're going to distribute for your owner pay and to make sure what's in the taxes and what's in the profit first goes in. Okay, and audit those twice a month. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so all your money just goes in. You don't even look at it commission by commission. You get used to setting it up on the 1st and the 15th or twice a month that you're going to go in, pay yourself every 2 weeks. That's what you're going to learn to live on is the salary, right? Your owner pay, your paycheck, you're paying yourself. You're going to live off that every 2 weeks, right? And then the rest of it goes where it needs to. Okay, so we're going to take a couple things into consideration as we start going through these next few slides. Okay, here's the things we're going to take into consideration. Number 1, when you're starting out, you may have more cost of sales. Okay, you might pay for leads a little bit more. You might take relocation leads a little bit more. You might be paying a little bit more to build up your business. Okay, so that's completely normal. Here's the other thing we're going to take into consideration. We're going to just automatically assume there's a 4% appreciation on your commissions, just like there's a 4% appreciation on the house prices every year. Okay, so when you start, your commissions are just naturally going to be an average lower. 3 years later, your commission should be a little bit higher just because your average is going up because you're just with the housing market. Okay, so let me know if you have any questions there. So in the very beginning, or if you've never done this process, this could be you. Okay, so this is your first few years of trying to build your profit first habits. Okay, and what you're first focusing on is just building a habit of keeping money. If I asked you all today, how many of you have a really good habit of keeping money? How many of you would raise your hand or put in the chat box, me, 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 me? It isn't me, so Lucy's killing it there. Lucy's good at keeping money. The rest of us are hiding. Okay. So the first thing you have to start doing is really building a habit of keeping money. Okay. And it may strain your life a little bit. It may feel uncomfortable. Okay. And that's okay. What feels uncomfortable is typically the best thing for you. Right. Okay. So let's look at this. The first 1 to 3 years, we have our same buckets as we had. Okay. So you're going to have about an $8,000 commission here. When your commission comes in, you're going to break it down to all of these places. Okay? This has an owner pay of 35%. When you're starting out, you're probably going to need a little bit more also, right? Plus, part of the incentive of this is to take these profits and make them work for you and build more money. If you reinvest these profits, right, that's how you make the profits snowball and your expenses stay or decline, right? Another reason to have profit. If you're living off this profit, it's not profit, okay? So you got to have the profit working for you and doing more and to keep snowballing that in, okay? So you're going to have $400 to $2,000 out of your first paycheck going to your profit. That's okay. If all you can do is 1% out of your first paycheck, do it. That's for you to determine, and that's what he recommends in the book. Start where you're at and try to add 1% the next paycheck and another 1% the following. Okay? So part of your job and what the book is really good about walking you through is how to lay out your current expenses and figure out where you're at currently, right? What are your current percentages of where your money's going? Okay. So if you don't know that part, that has to be your first step, right? Is figuring out where's my money going now? What are my current allocated percentages? Okay. Then you need to lay them out next to these graphs and percentages and say, if this is my goal percentage that I want to get to for every commission, now how will I add my 1% to get me there each time? Okay. Here's the other thing. Your expenses may be way out of whack, right? Your taxes. You have to be real careful when you're first building this that you're not putting yourself into the red. You're not going into debt because of too much profit or not taking care of other things. Okay? Here's the other important thing. If you have debt, credit card debt, business debt, anything like that, mortgages are not considered in this. This is business debt. That is considered in your expense outlay. Okay? So for every commission check, if we only have $800 on expenses and my debt payments have to come out of that $800, it leaves very, very, very little to run the business on. That's where debt will kill you. Okay? So you have to eat away at that. You may have to increase your expenses for a little bit to eat away at your debt and get rid of it so that you can start making profits. Okay? But that's really where you're going to have to dig into your numbers and your habits and that sort of thing and audit yourself. Where am I landing now? And how close can I get to this? And how can I move myself over the next 3 years to get closer to this model? Okay. Any questions on this one? So the reason it's 5 to 25, right, is because in the beginning you might pay up to 25. You may pay up to 50% in cost of sales, right? That's okay, but you've got to make sure you're allocating that from somewhere else and realizing if your cost of sales is more than allocated, it's coming from your profit, right? If your pay is more than you're making or more than allocated, it's coming from your profit. Okay, that's where you have to be paying attention to that and knowing and having a place for your profit in order to gauge it. All right. After you've created the habit of just keeping some money off the top, we got someone that jumped in, Jay. I don't know if he's still on. You're going into growth. Okay? This is where, okay, sorry. Do you call that an expense too? Yes. If you cut your commission to get a listing, that is a cost of sale. And you can consider it whichever way you want. Some people will account it as an expense. I liked to because you get the write-off of it. But then you have to create an invoice for your client. Okay? So what most people will do is just avoid it altogether and just account for it. Let it reduce their commission average, Connie. Does that make sense? So you just say, I took less on this deal and it just lowered my 2.8% commission to now a 2.75% commission because I gave it back on a couple. Okay, so you can do it one or two ways.
Okay.
Okay, so whatever makes sense to your business and what your accountant wants to see.
Okay.
Good question. What other questions? Okay. So now let's look at the next stage. So once you're starting to keep the money, now you want to really get some consistency and some stability going. Okay. This is how you know you're really getting into the profit first model. I have an agent that I coach. Oh, I'm going to forget the word he said already, and I meant to remember it just for this. But he has been following this process, and he said it is cathartic to his business to follow this process. Okay, cathartic. There's not many things in business that word goes with. And he's like, it feels so cathartic to be following this model. He knows that he's building profits. He knows that he's managing his expenses. He knows he's ready for quarterly taxes every time they come. Right. And so, yeah, he's been doing it about 4 months. And that is the exact word he said, is that he feels cathartic. That's what you should feel when you follow this. Okay. That's what you're going to feel when you get this consistency and this stability coming in. Okay, so after you've had a couple years in the business, your commission is going to raise. So we're going to break that down a little. And then you should see some of these shifting. Okay, you should see your profit increasing. We may have had 5 the first couple years that we were shooting for. Now we're able to move it up to 15 to 25. We're starting to get a better handle on what we can live off of and what that every 2 weeks salary or paycheck should be to ourselves. Okay, we're starting to invest this money, right? Think about that. If you go back 2 slides, even if you had $400 from every closing you did last year, and you reinvested that in anything that makes it more money, think about how that snowballs year after year after year, right? Now we're 3 years in and we're looking at 1,500 to 2,500 every single time. So the intention of this is if you make your profit work for you, the income from the profit can pay your expenses. Okay, so that's the goal, is to make this work for you and then take away some of these other expenses from you because the profit's making that for you. Does that make sense? So it's twofold, but you've got to first have the profit to do it with, and then you have to be diligent about using it to build more wealth, right? Get it out there and get it working for you. Okay. And then once you're having good, stable profit, you're really, really, really building wealth. That profit begins to snowball. The wealth from the profit begins to snowball. Now you should have 30% maxed out on your profit here. Your cost of sales should be coming down very greatly, right? And your expenses, while they might be going up, the intention is, again, that this profit is eliminating, the profit from the profit is eliminating any expenses you might have. Okay. So here's the goal. Profit goes up and your expenses should eventually go down. Now, if, number one, you don't have room for profit right now, you have to cut expenses. You have to cut expenses. It is not likely that you can cut what you pay yourself. Correct? Okay. So if you have to pay yourself, you have to pay yourself, right? You can't cut out Uncle Sam. So you have got to spend some time on your expenses. Where are those going? How do I get those as low as possible? Okay. And then as profit brings more money, you can reinvest it back in to make more money. But if you do not have profit, the first place you have to start is by reducing your expenses. Okay. This is key, right? You got to have a system for your money. What does the system look like? It looks like setting up the bank accounts, right? Oh, yeah, this is a good one. If you do not have a system, this is probably what you're feeling right now, right? All this, you feel like I don't have any profit habit. I may or may not have owner pay. I don't even really know. I know I'm paying my bills every month, but I'm not really sure. Potentially overspending if you don't know, and you most definitely probably don't have a plan for your money, right? So start building that plan today. Here's the first 3 things you've got to do. You got to set your percentages. Okay, so take your taxes, take your expenses. I want you to lay all of your expenses out into your cost of sales, your expenses, your taxes, and figure out where you stand currently on your current percentages. How much profit are you bringing in? How much owner pay do you need every 2 weeks to live like you want to live? Right? If you don't have a goal for those numbers and those percentages, you're definitely never going to get there. Right? So you have got to look at it. Where am I now? And where do I want to be? Okay? So in the next 7 days, you need to set these percentages for yourself. Okay? Identify your current and identify where you want to be by the end of the year. Then you need your plan of what you're going to allocate every single commission and where you're going to put it. It's in this step you go create the bank accounts. Set them up. Your savings accounts, hide them. He even recommends that the savings account be at a completely different bank. That might be overkill for me. I feel like we could probably use one bank and have 5 accounts. But again, there may be some magic to that I haven't lived yet. But I've been okay with one bank so far. So don't overcomplicate it. And then once you've made your allocations and you feel comfortable with them, you have got to repeat them every single deal. Okay? It's when we start going off the plan that we start being reactive with our money again, right? My favorite thing is to be living on a budget because all of those sales calls and all of those shiny objects that people are throwing at you all the time, hey, we've got this now, hey, we've got this now. If you've set a budget for the year, it shouldn't be in there because you should have allocated for every single expense that you had that year already. Okay, so nothing slips in if you are repeating it every single time the same way, right? And managing your dollars. Okay, so here's a three key things I want you guys doing. Figuring out how to pay yourself first. If you are not paying yourself on an every 2-week salary, you've got to figure out how to do that first and foremost. It is way too crazy to try to live off this $20,000 is coming in this week and I don't have any for the next 4 to 6 to 8. Okay? So figure out how you can drop all your money into one place regardless and start paying yourself at least a steady amount every 2 weeks, even if that's a small amount that has to continue to increase to get up to exactly what you need. Okay? So start today paying yourself every 2 weeks. Number 2, you need to break down your allocations for your next commission. Be ready. Have the bank accounts ready so the next time you get a commission, it is automatically happening to your money for you. Okay? Remember, you have access to all this money. Okay? So don't panic. If you move too much into account and you're like, oh, now I don't have money, right? Don't panic about any of that. You can fix it. Get your money back where you need it for that time, right? And live and learn. Okay? But make sure you're allocating the money. Be doing that process every single check you get. Okay? And if you can cut one expense, do it. If you can look at your book of expenses and cut one, it's likely one you don't really need. cut as many that you don't really need. Because here's what I want you understanding. Every expense that is not necessary is taking directly from your profits that could be making more money. Okay? That's why it's so important to cut your expenses down. I know you hate when I say this. You're already paying a phone bill, and phone calls are free. Every one of you can build an absolutely free business today by picking up this phone and just calling the people you know. You do not have to have an expense except your phone. Okay? So that's a really easy way to look at your expenses and be real with yourself. If you don't have any profit, you need to look close at those expenses and say, where can I be taking profit today by cutting down those expenses? Okay, cut one expense and that exact amount. Even if you find $40 a month, put $40 a month into your profit, right? It will make a huge difference. Allocate that money back towards your profit, any expense that you cut. Okay? This is big. You're a business owner. You should be acting like one. More than that, getting paid like one. Right? All of you are too good at this to be getting paid like an employee. You own a business. We need that business to be profitable. Okay? That is the purpose of this, is to start earning like you own a business. Okay? So, of course, I've got everything you guys want to help implementing on all of this. The very best next step you can do is go grab that Profit First for Realtors. It is on my Audible, it's on my desk, it's everywhere. You should have it. It's a wonderful book. If there's anything you can get out of business that will make you feel cathartic, it feels like it's worth buying that book today, right? Okay, so go get the book, take your expenses, work really hard on those, figuring out what you're allocating currently and what you want to be allocating, and cut yourselves an expense today. Okay? All right, so I'll stay for questions if you have any, if you want me to show any slides again so you can dig deeper into them. I know it was very high level. What I hope is that changed your mindset about your money and your commissions and how you get more of it and keep more of it. If that happened, give me a thumbs up and then let me know if you have any questions. And if not, I'll see you all in April and we got lots of good time back. Yay. Good. I'm glad it was helpful. Good. Go make some great strides in your money. And if you need help, you know I'm here.